it's a festival on creativity. Procurement impacts creativity. Would you mind just talking a little bit about that, about how?
Absolutely. Ultimately, creativity and agencies exist to solve clients' most urgent business problems. And that requires people. That's the number one asset. That's the number one cost for an agency. It requires the talent, the training, the investment, the technology, the tools, the systems. It's a lot that goes into that. All of that influences the ultimate output, which is creativity. And it's, do you have the right seniority versus junior people? That's also been another challenge. So it all ultimately impacts creativity, which is also why you see things like 0% feedback from agencies.
Zero. So where do marketing procurement people come from? So there's two traditional paths. This hasn't changed from the two surveys 12 years apart. So one path is they come from sourcing what's called direct. It's kind of funny language. Advertising is what they call indirect procurement. If you're sourcing raw materials, so I'm making it up, you work for Hershey and you're sourcing cocoa beans. So that is called direct. About half of the procurement folks come from sourcing, from direct sourcing, so something other than marketing and advertising. And the other half come from either client-side marketing or marketing operations or agencies. And it's been a long time debate in our committees, which one is better? And there's pluses and minuses of each. I'm just curious about your perspective.
Yes, so I think the challenge in the past has been that agencies would work with procurement people that largely did not have experience in understanding marketing, and it's back to, okay, we're working with people that were used to procuring petroleum, not marketing, and marketing is about people. And so it is very different, and there's a book called Buying Less for Less, which came out in 2013. Bill Duggan gave an endorsement by Jerry Priest, the former head of strategic sourcing at P&G, and Russell Woolworth, a former agency exec and now consultant, and it was all about marketing is a very different way of actually doing procurement, and there are sort of these lessons and roadmap that you should follow. And I think that's really important because we're starting to see more former agency people go into procurement roles, so that's positive. I have a former colleague who just joined Lego in that role, and I think that they bring a different perspective. So the more that we can get people that are knowledgeable or willing to learn about marketing and to understand the differences, it will really benefit not only the relationship, but the agencies and ultimately the work.
Because it's been said that people like your friend are more comfortable working in gray areas, subjectivity, some of the classic procurement people from direct, they're in a very black and white world. And,
the other difference is there's not as much variability in cocoa beans, for example, or whatever, petroleum, that the pricing variation is not significant. When you're talking about agencies, it's pretty vast, and it's different interpretations of the work and how it gets done, but the work changes year to year significantly. There aren't significant changes, I would say, more on the direct side.
How do you put a value on an idea? Well, it depends on the idea.
Yes.
So another sort of debate is where should procurement report? So usually it's a classic reporting structure that marketing procurement reports into a bigger procurement organization. At some companies, it reports into finance. At a handful, it reports into marketing. Target is one of those companies. P&G is another. If I asked you to think about your perception of Target and P&G, it would likely be pretty positive. Do you have a perspective on the reporting of procurement? I know you do.
Of course I do. Procurement should report into marketing. If you're fulfilling a service for marketing, that's where that partnership and that collaboration should happen. The problem, we believe, is that when procurement is reporting into a finance lead, they do not see marketing as an investment. They see it as a cost. They focus very much on short term, which is a huge challenge. We want marketers to be thinking long term and to be looking at agencies as partners, but the work also is changing year to year. And how do you think more long term in terms of the results you're trying to drive? Again, back to it's an investment. So it's challenging when it's all reporting to finance. And we talk a lot about, right brain, left brain, or you can talk Myers-Briggs, whatever you want to talk. There's very different language that's often spoken between agency people. Agency people are very unique. I spent 30 years on the agency side. There's just a different makeup. And you're talking about procurement people who typically have a very heavy financial background. And so it's important on the agency side that you have people that get really savvy on procurement, but also make sure they involve their finance teams and that they're bringing in people who can speak that same language and have those conversations.
So what do you see as some of the characteristics of the better procurement folks?
So I will talk even about my own experience when I was running P&G business, and they always called it strategic sourcing. And I remember, and at that time it was still reporting up through sourcing, but a partnership through the media and marketing team. There was a new woman who came on. She had never done marketing before, and I spent a lot of time helping to educate her, but also to partner with her. And I remember one year going through a negotiation, and it did not go well. And she said, I need more data. I need more facts. So the next year, I had my team. We did a fact book because the marketing teams were expanding, the creative agencies were expanding, the media agency, we were flat. I'm like, there's so much more work. We're going to prove it to you. And it was a great partnership because she said, this is what I need. So I think if you can really get to what do we need, how do we build that partnership, it can work in a very positive way.
And having the empathy too is great, because I also know that P&G was big on putting as much as the agencies hate getting that call or email, we want to send our procurement person to live with you for a month. That could be a pretty good experience for both, after the fact.
Absolutely, because they used to have something called ZOG, zero overhead growth. You don't want negative overhead growth or zero overhead growth. You want positive overhead growth, right? You want to help grow the business. That's what both sides are interested in doing.
So one of the other interesting data points is we ask people about procurement's involvement with agencies. Is it just right, too little, or too much? So procurement and agencies pretty much said just right. I'm doing this from memory, maybe.
Marketers.
50, procurement, yeah, exactly. Procurement and marketers said just right. Although there was a big, minority procurement constituents that said we want more, but agencies said no, it's way too much. So, and I believe that if most agencies could wave a magic wand and make procurement go away, they would. But why do agencies feel it's too much? And then what could procurement do to kind of turn that perception around?
It tends to be too much when the questions are not productive. If it's focusing on just cost, I will also say the biggest challenge is when there is always a look back and a comparison. The work changes year to year. It is not helpful to constantly be looking at FTE or cost plus. That's a fairly outdated model in my view. I think the creative agencies are moving off that. The media agencies are still very much there in many respects. Some still even charge commission for various media types. So the opportunity is to move beyond that and to start looking forward. And we're actually working with you, which is great, on an alternative compensation model council to talk about what are the different types of models and ways that we can be working.
But if it's constant nagging about getting the cost down, that's why it's too much.
It's just reinforcing why you see 0%, because it just feels like it's always about, hey, if I'm reporting into a finance person, that person is being incentivized to reduce costs. Therefore, the procurement person is incentivized to do the same. And typically, it also comes down to new business pitching. Who's leading the new business pitch? Is it the marketing team? Is it the procurement team? What's the involvement there? And when it's the procurement team, it's about a cost savings exercise. And it's challenging because, and we've talked about this, and I know you've talked to Matt about this, the amount of money that marketers spend on a pitch, the amount of money agencies spend on a pitch, there's got to be a better way to use that money.
And that's definitely one of the new dynamics in the business, that the traditional search consultants have been doing fewer pitches, and procurement has done more. I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the search consultants are handling some of the bigger creative and media pitches, but if you're thinking about a PR agency or something, procurement is more likely to be involved.
Yeah, and the challenge there is that they don't have the experience necessarily running a pitch. They aren't always focused, I would say, on the right things. Depends on the client. And one of the challenges we have, and we hear this from agencies, is they get ghosted quite often. So they'll go through the whole process, they'll spend money, they never hear anything at the end. And that's why we actually launched something last year called the Agency Review Participation Agreement to try and get our agencies to say, hey, we need you to tell us not only the budget up front, but that you're going to give us an answer, as well as give us feedback. If we're going to invest the time, you should invest the time to give us that feedback.
Yeah, and everybody's busy, of course, but when you put in time, you deserve that. I know you were interested in the dynamic between procurement and marketing, so
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
so it's gotten better. So it's not all the way to bright yet, but that's one of the good news, on some of the different dynamics, like how critical is procurement to the marketing department, that both procurement and marketing rated it at the same level, which was a big difference than 12 years ago, that they did not do that. Agencies, again, rated it lower. And on some of the other metrics, there was better alignment. I do think that the road to a better relationship between procurement and agencies goes through marketing, because you really need a strong marketing group. We hear too many stories about the good cop, bad cop type of thing, and marketing teams bad-mouthing procurement to agencies, and just talking about some of the solutions, because I don't want this to just be a bitch fest about what's wrong with procurement, but I think one of the solutions is that the goals of the goals of procurement and marketing need to be aligned. You can't have marketing say, our goal is growth, and procurement's goal to be cut costs, that you need it to be aligned. Do you see that?
And that's where
Yeah.
the tension
Yeah.
comes in for the agencies, because they're getting one message from the marketing team, they get another message from procurement. The
Right.
worst is when the marketing team just absolves themselves of any responsibility. And they're like, I can't do anything about it, it's the procurement team.
Right.
That's incredibly frustrating. And it's why you see agencies give you that kind of feedback. And it does have to be addressed, but we also need marketers to own a bit more of that.
Well, I would
too.
think that the marketer, they should trump procurement. Procurement doesn't sit across the table with creatives, when the storyboards or ideas are being presented. Maybe they should from time to time, but that's the relationship that the marketers own. So,
But they sit in on the pitch.
yeah.
They most often sit in on the pitch where that work is being presented, whether it's creative, media, PR, they are a part of it.